From Washington, this is VOA News. Coming up, airstrikes on Islamic State targets in Syria, new attacks on Ebola workers in Guinea. President Obama is urging Islamic State fighters to, in his words, leave the battlefield while you can. Comes hours after the government launched a second round of airstrikes against the military group, the militant group that is, in Syria. Also called on the international community to join the fight against the militants.
The words spoken here today must be matched and translated into action, into deeds, concrete action within nations and between them, not just in the days ahead, but for years to come. For if there was ever a challenge in our interconnected world that cannot be met by one nation alone, it is this: terrorists crossing borders and threatening to unleash unspeakable violence.
UN Security Council, at a meeting chaired by President Obama, has unanimously passed a resolution cracking down on the flow of foreign fighters to militant organizations such as the Islamic State group. Mr. Obama opened the session by voicing solidarity with France after one of its citizens was kidnapped and beheaded by jihadists in Algeria linked to the Islamic State. A Red Cross team was attacked while collecting bodies believed to be infected with Ebola in southeastern Guinea. Family members of the dead initially set upon the Red Cross volunteers and vandalized their cars. Eventually, a crowd went to the regional health office where they threw rocks at the building. The attack is the most recent in a series that have plagued teams working to bury bodies safely, provide information about Ebola, and disinfect public places. This is VOA News. Hundreds of Islamist extremists have surrendered in Nigeria following the military's recent air and ground attacks against the Boko Haram militant group. The Nigerian Defense Ministry said Wednesday it has killed hundreds of insurgents in the country's northeast, including Mohammed Bashir, identified as a double who posed in videos as Boko Haram leader Abu Bakr Shekau. The military has claimed Shekau was killed in battle last year. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk says he is very skeptical about the ceasefire with Russia, calling it extremely fragile and shaky. Mr. Yatsenyuk told an audience of the Council on Foreign Relations in New York Wednesday that Ukraine could easily deter separatists and restore peace in the country, but he said its armed forces cannot fight against the well-trained and well-equipped Russian military. Although Moscow denies it, there has been ample evidence of Russian military support for insurgents in eastern Ukraine and the presence of Russian troops on Ukrainian soil. NATO says some Russian troops still remain. The Obama administration expects that incoming Afghan President Ashraf Ghani will sign a bilateral security deal as early as next week. That deal allows U.S. troops to remain in Afghanistan beyond this year as part of a NATO-led training and advisory mission. Outgoing President Hamid Karzai negotiated with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry last year but refused to sign it. Mr. Ghani and his unity government partner Abdullah have both pledged to sign the pact. India successfully placed a spacecraft into orbit. It went around Mars, making it the first country to reach the red planet in its first attempt. Anjana Pasricha reports from New Delhi.
Scientists of the Indian Space Research Organization erupted into cheers, shook hands, and called it a dream come true as the Indian spacecraft entered Mars orbit early Wednesday. They were joined by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who congratulated the nation.
History has been created today. We have dared to reach out into the unknown and have achieved the near impossible.
India has dubbed the ambitious project a technology demonstrator, showcasing the nation's ability to conduct an interplanetary mission put together by its own scientists. Anjana Pasricha for VOA News, New Delhi.
Hardline Indonesian Islamic group has staged a demonstration against the expected elevation of a Chinese Christian to the post of Jakarta governor next month. Basuki is currently deputy governor, slated to take the top post when the current governor, Joko Widodo, is sworn in as president next month. Get more news at voanews.com.
That's the latest world news from VOA.